Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. What's up, Kory?
Nothing much, Nick. Battling allergies, sounding a little congested, but I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, you're probably doing better than the Raptors, Jazz, and Pelicans right now, but that's
true. Definitely better than the Raptors. Can't be. I'm definitely better than them.
He's putting up a little fight. He hasn't got swept yet, but before we get started, just a reminder, you can listen to the NBA Outlet on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and airing now on Dash Radio. Well, let's get started with the Western Conference. We'll talk Rockets and Jazz first. Obviously, that series just kind of completed last night, 5-game series. You know, the Jazz put up a fight. They did deal with a lot of injuries. Obviously, Ricky Rubio being out, Favors was banged up, Mitchell was banged up at the end of the series. But what do we learn about the Rockets in this series?
Well, what we learned is that even when, James Harden has a bad night, Chris Paul can be right there to pick him up and vice versa. A few times we saw what happens when one of those guys is off, the other one kind of elevates their games. We really still haven't seen like that signature game that we've mentioned a few times. Obviously, PJ Tucker was pretty big last night, and he's had some glimpses, and Clint Capela has been, fantastic for the most part. But like Trevor Ariza hasn't had a huge game. Abalamute hasn't had a huge game. Eric Gordon's had a couple nice games, but they haven't really had that Houston Rockets game that we've seen them play all year long.
Yeah, honestly, you hit on Clint Capela, and he's been a guy who's just been balling. He's been playing super hard. His confidence is very high, and I think it's fair to say he outplayed Karl-Anthony Towns in round 1, and he outplayed Rudy Gobert in round 2. Obviously, the circumstances for Rudy Gobert weren't great, but Capela was battling with him, blocked his shots, blocked Favors' shots. He really owned the paint. Do you think he's somebody that can have a big impact moving forward in possibly the Western Conference Finals and maybe the Finals?
Well, we know that the Warriors are probably they're going to want Houston to try and go smaller, or they're going to pull Clint Capela away from the basket. So that's going to be something that the Rockets are going to have to adjust to. But there's no doubt in my mind that he's a huge factor. He's a double-double for them. His impact on the defensive side of the ball, like you mentioned, he outplayed Gobert last series. And defensively, you can say that his impact defensively at times was bigger than Gobert. A ton of blocks, a lot of.
He did a better job of getting pulled away from the rim, where if you pull Gobert away from the rim, it's a problem for him. Capela did a better job staying in front of guards. Even a couple times, Donovan Mitchell, he got him at the rim, blocked a shot. And that, like you mentioned, the Warriors are going to try to pull him away. I think Capela showed a good amount of defense where he was able to kind of stay with some of the smaller guards. Obviously, Golden State is a different animal, but we'll see what happens. Nick, Paul, you mentioned too.
I got to tell you these stats first. So the last 3 games of Houston versus Utah, in game 3, Clint Capela had 4 blocks. In game 5, Clint Capela had 6 blocks. And last night in game 5, he had 5 blocks.
Ridiculous. That's huge numbers going against a front line that's supposed to be better than yours. I mean, and the confidence in I want to say it was after game 4 when the Rockets had won and he had a big game offensively and defensively. His teammates kind of pumped him on too. So it's very, very encouraging for the Rockets fan. You mentioned Chris Paul. Harden hasn't been great. Like the crazy thing about Harden is he's averaging close to 30 a game. Shooting percentages are around 40%, but he just hasn't looked, 100% MVP form. And Chris Paul saw that last night and he stepped up. He had a big game. What do you think that type of game, a 40-point closeout game for Chris Paul to finally get to the conference finals, what does that say about him?
I mean, it certainly puts to rest all of the naysayers and doubters saying, Chris Paul can't win in the playoffs, or Chris Paul, isn't clutch when it comes to the playoffs. As Chris Paul said after they won game 4, he's been up 3-1 before. And,
yes.
It's gone bad. Funny enough, it was against the Rockets that it happened against. And this time playing for the Rockets, Chris Paul made sure that there wasn't going to be a game 6. The one play in particular that he dribbled up to the free throw line and then dribbled back to hit an off balance 3. He was just unconscious. Chris Paul is a decent 3-point shooter, but he's definitely, you wouldn't say above average or far above average. And last night, any 3-point shot he took, it felt like it was going to go in. And what he shot, 80% from 3?
Yeah, 8 to 10 from 3. So, I mean, like you said, he's a very good 3-point shooter, but he's not a guy who's going to drop 8 threes in a game on a regular basis. And you touched on the role players too. PJ Tucker, very impressive game. And I didn't really know much about the connection between him and Chris Paul. After the press conference of the game, they mentioned they've known each other for a long time. And the way Chris Paul and Morey worked the deals, they were able to sign Tucker. And I think he'll be big because he provides a different type of leadership and toughness for this team. He's just like a mean dude on the court. Trevor Ariza, I still think he's got something in the tank that he'll kind of show a little more in the next series. Abba Mute is a guy that I feel like is slept on. He's still a little rusty coming back from the injury, but I can feel his impact when he's healthy and when he's showing the flashes of being, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. All three of those guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is going to be crucial for the Rockets next series.
Especially about Mute. I feel like, not to cut you off, sorry, Kory.
No, his length is good.
Yeah, against like a Kevin Durant, like obviously no one's a great matchup for Kevin Durant, but I'd like to see what he can do if he's healthy against him.
Yeah, I feel like you have like the best of three worlds, right? You have Abba Mute, who's got a good defensive IQ and length, PJ Tucker, who's the bruiser and physical, and then just Trevor Ariza, who's just, an all-around good defender.
Yeah, he's kind of like a mix of the two almost. And then, like you said, Eric Gordon, he's a guy who's shown good flashes. Like, that's a guy I think if they want to beat the Warriors, not to get ahead of ourselves, we're going to do a Western Conference Finals. He's a guy that has to show more. Like, he showed a little bit in the series. He had one 20-point game or something like that, 25 points, but way too inconsistent. And Harden, he needs to kind of get his mentality right. For the whole Rockets team, it's funny to say this, and they finished both series in 5. It does not feel like they've probably even played up to 90% of their level. Like, they've had good quarters and good halves, but they're yet to have a complete game.
It's similar to the Cavs in the sense where, aside from Chris Paul, I think he's been pretty consistent, and obviously James Harden's been up and down. For the role players like Eric Gordon, they've put together like good quarters and good halves, but none of the guys aside from Harden or Chris Paul, I mean, Capela is an exception. He's been, steady throughout.
Yeah, honestly, you can maybe make the argument he's been the most consistent out of everybody.
Right. Yeah, you definitely can. I just don't think the role players have put together a consistent game. Even that game that Eric Gordon had 25, and I think he had like 17 points in the first half, which means he really cooled off in the second half. But, it's none of those guys are just like feeling it. No one really has the hot hand yet.
Yeah, I would say if I had to pick one guy who had a really complete game, and I would say Tucker in the game last night. Other than that, it's been a lot of up and down. But talking about the Rockets, and Harden, I think too, like he's had good stretches, but he's got to pick it up a little bit. I think defensively, like he gets a little bit lazy in transition defense. The Rockets in general showed some issues in transition defense in this series where they just kind of weren't getting back in time, trying to go for offensive rebounds. The Warriors will eat you alive, but not talking too much about Warriors and Rockets. Let's talk a little bit about the Jazz side. On the Jazz, what did you learn about them?
I mean, what we learned is that this team is up and coming. They're I think you tweeted it last night. You would never have really, Gordon Hayward seems like so long ago already.
Afterthought.
Yeah, just like forget about him. Donovan Mitchell has erased all, no one's missing Gordon Hayward. Donovan Mitchell, 23 points in that third quarter after just 4 going into the third. Unfortunately, he got, a little banged up with that foot injury that he's been dealing with. But, they look good. They're a piece away from being a real threat in the West, I think. Obviously, the defense is consistent. Donovan Mitchell's been good and et cetera, but they're still missing that one more offensive piece, I think, that really puts them over the top. But overall, it's a really good year for Utah. Getting into the second round, looking – I mean, for the most part, they competed with the Rockets. The Rockets, they really didn't blow them out. I think they blew them out, one game, maybe 2?
Yeah, probably around that. I mean, like they hung in there, and even some of the blowout games are able to kind of at least push it back and get it into double digits. I think Mitchell has been just super impressive in the fact his ability to hit a lot of tough shots. There was a couple plays in the series where he literally got the ball knocked out of his hands midair, recovered, and then scooped it in. I think that's very impressive. You mentioned like another all-star type offensive player, I think is what they need. Like ironically enough, somebody like a Gordon Hayward. But if they had kept Hayward, I don't think they would have drafted Mitchell. Even though I know a report came out saying his workout was amazing, they probably wouldn't have been looking as much in that area, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose anything is possible, but I'm with you. I think if you still have Hayward, you probably address a different aspect of the draft.
But hey, who knows? Like, I mean, they could have, it would have worked out perfectly. Another guy who had a really nice series, I think, and he showed something, and it's been, a quiet few years. He's dealt with a lot of injuries in his young NBA career. That was Alec Burks. He showed a great ability driving, getting to the rim, and finishing and scoring. And he kind of kept them in a couple games where they were just not putting up any points.
Really aggressive. He's fearless. The few times that he really got a chance to flourish in this series, you saw him just attack the rim. Very good off the dribble. I definitely think, like you mentioned, a guy who's always hurt. And even a few times this year, I think he had a couple stretches where he, I want to say it was mid-February, but he went on a stretch where he had a couple games over 20. And he's definitely, off the bench, especially with Rodney Hood being gone. I wouldn't be surprised if next year you see him in a bigger bench role.
Yeah, and I feel like if he's healthy, he should be able to polish his game a little bit, become a more of a consistent three-point shooter, clean up the handles a little bit because they can be sloppy at times. But he's a guy that could give them a nice offensive pop. Royce O'Neal, obviously he's not a guy you necessarily want starting in a second round of the Western Conference playoffs, but getting that experience I think will really help him, help his confidence. Joe Ingles, like a lot of people were super surprised by his play, and I really wasn't that surprised because I felt like Ingles is a guy that we knew was very talented, high basketball IQ. It just has been like, he just hasn't been aggressive at times, and this is a series where he just kind of lit it up and kind of got into people's heads a little bit.
I feel like he's one of those guys who obviously, as you just said, he's very skilled. He plays solid defense. He can hit the three. He can do a lot of things offensively. A very underrated passer, I think, even. But
yeah, he can. They should have probably ran the pick and roll with him a little bit more. Yeah. Kind of it. Just tough situation for Utah injury-wise.
Like you kind of hinted at, he's just not that assertive. I don't think it's in his DNA to a degree at times to be like an aggressive offensive force and be assertive. I feel like he feels more comfortable in that kind of passive role. Let the offense come to me. If it gets to me, then it gets to me. If not, I'm not going to try and force it. Which I think at times he probably should force a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's probably why he's able to stay so efficient is because he's a little bit more passive. And I think he's just a guy that fits really well in a system. Like he's not a guy that wants to do a lot of ISO, but in the right system, he really should excel. And he did in this series. Anything else on the Jazz side you want to touch on?
They missed Ricky Rubio. It's unfortunate that we didn't have any Ricky Rubio. If you were listening to some of the comments he had following last night's loss, he was really upset that he couldn't be out there battling with the guys. And I agree. I don't know how much this series changes, but I wouldn't be surprised if this had gone 6 if Ricky Rubio had been healthy, especially with how he was playing in that first round.
I could have easily seen it go in one more game if Rubio's healthy. It would have taken a lot of pressure off Donovan Mitchell. Not even just scoring-wise. Obviously, Rubio's not a super talented scorer, but just running the show, being that point guard, and kind of taking some of the pressure off the guys defensively. Not that he was going to lock anybody down, but just another healthy body out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, the Jazz, and we'll definitely talk about them in the offseason preview, but they, bright future for them. Rudy Gobert's still young. Donovan Mitchell's looking like a young superstar, and he really put on a show in the playoffs. I think anybody who doubted him in the regular season really couldn't say much in the postseason because he just took it to another level. Obviously, shooting numbers weren't great, but just some of the flashes, like you said, that third quarter last night, it was just amazing.
Yeah, 7 straight games with 20 points in the playoffs at one point in time this 2018 playoff run. And shout out to Quinn Snyder.
Yes.
2 years in a row, he's done a fantastic job. Within the next 5 years, I'll make a prediction that he wins Coach of the Year. He's been top. I think he had to be, for me, at least top 3 last year. He's definitely top 3 this year. He just continues to do a tremendous job between injuries, losing stars. Hats off to him.
Yeah, and it's like tough. Coach of the Year sometimes doesn't necessarily even go to the coach who does the best job. It just goes sometimes to the team that has the best record, which is not necessarily the best coach. So, like you said, a lot of props to Snyder. Also, Derek Favors is a guy that I thought had some really nice moments in the playoffs. Like I said, we'll be talking Jazz not that far out from here. But let's move to the next series, Warriors-Pelicans. And, Warriors obviously got back Steph in this series. Pels have been kind of like a Cinderella story in the playoffs. Got that sweep in the first round. Looked like they might push the series after they won Game 3, but the Warriors are just the Warriors.
I mean, last night made me change a lot of thoughts and predictions watching that second half of that game. In the first half, everyone was kind of, the offense for the Warriors was a little stale. Klay Thompson was the only one with the hot hand early. And then, the Warriors do what they always do, it feels like. The third quarter, they just whatever Kerr gives them, if it's maybe it's the Michael Jordan special sauce or juice, whatever from the Space Jam. Because those guys come out in the second half and they just have a different fire. Curry finished, 28 points, 10 of 16. Durant finished with 24. Klay finished with 23. Those guys just I don't know. They're just a different animal. And the Pelicans played really good. Drew Holiday had a triple-double last night. He balled out. Anthony Davis continued to do what he did. But they were just a little bit short, and the Warriors are just that great.
Yeah, on my notes right here, I have down is they still kill. Like the Warriors, they still kill you. They just that third quarter, you can just sense it coming. It's just almost impossible to stop three guys offensively gifted like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant. In post game three, I think Durant took some tough shots, and Kerr said we need to do a better job of getting him in better positions. It felt like he was just living around that, the paint, not exactly in the paint, but just that mid range area, which is like a layup for him considering his size and length and getting the matchups with the guards. They did a great job screening for him. Draymond obviously is starting to pick it up, and I really like what I saw from Draymond in the sense of keeping his cool. He only had one tech this whole playoff so far, and Rondo really did everything in his power to get under his skin and piss him off. Draymond did a great job keeping his composure, and defensively, he's not going to probably have to deal. James Harden's a tough defend, but Anthony Davis is probably the toughest defend other than LeBron that he's going to have to deal with in the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, Draymond Green saw his counterpart in Rondo. A guy who irritates you, does everything to bother you. And like you said, only one technical through 2 rounds. That's what you want to hear if you're a Warriors fan. And actually, I really liked what Draymond did overall in this series. Again, last night he was
average a triple-double, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he was 1 assist shy from a triple-double last night, but I think you're right. I think he did average a triple-double. And for me, what was the biggest thing for me is he's getting more consistent shooting-wise. He was struggling in the first round, and this series at least, he was starting to see shots fall. And, if Draymond's being a consistent knockdown shooter, that's when you're going to be in trouble.
You can't really beat the Warriors when Draymond's knocking down the three, and that's kind of always been the X factor going to the postseason. Excuse me. If he's knocking down that three-point shot, the pick and roll is almost indefendable because they're just so dominant, so many shooters around the floor. It's like the Warriors, Kevin Durant, I feel like no one has really talked about him, but he's quietly just dominating the playoffs. Like he's a guy that's just been quietly doing his work, putting up like 28 to 30 points a game and just on a really nice shooting percentages. And no one's even talking about it. And then next thing you know, he's going to probably take it up to another level when he sees LeBron, possibly in the finals or next round when he sees a James Harden.
Well, the only thing he's not doing well is shooting the 3-point percentage well.
Which is fine, to be honest, because his mid-range team is –
if anything, that's scary,
Yeah.
Because you're not going to keep Durant from shooting a high percentage all playoffs. So for me, the fact that he's shooting so poorly early is just a recipe for disaster because I just don't see it continuing.
Exactly, and he's bound to get more open looks now with Steph back, and Steph, I think, started to click a little bit. Yeah, when he returned, like he mentioned, his adrenaline was kicking, so he looked great. But a few games after that, a few quarters after that, he doesn't really look the same. Last night, you start to get some of that Steph Curry vibe back, and that's just dangerous.
Yeah, the 28 points on 10 of 16 shooting. It's like you mentioned, that first game back it felt like that a couple years ago when he came back versus Portland. He was yelling on back and going off and going berserk. That's what that game felt like. And then he came, the injury part still kind of lingered. But yeah, I think when Curry's playing like this and he looks to be at least getting better and better, it's looking good for the Warriors, honestly.
Honestly, and another positive factor is last year Klay really struggled in the playoffs. This year, not having Curry there, they had to rely on him a little bit more, and he's just had some of these super hot Klay Thompson moments where it's like moving forward, if all three of these guys are really hitting their shots, there's not much you can do. And the bench has also been low-key, had some really nice plays. Quinn Cook, Sean Livingston, Kevon Looney, David West. Andre Iguodala's been starting now, so just a lot of these guys, they're just getting so much contributions from all over the place.
And that's something, too, I wanted to mention. In games 4 and 5, when Iggy started for the Warriors this past series, he finished both games, game 4 plus 21 and last night plus 25. So that super small ball lineup, the death line that they run out, Iggy's been super effective. I mean, he's not even scoring. He had 6 points in game 4, 2 points in game 5, but he's doing the defensive things. He's passing the ball. He's had 11 assists in those 2 games. I really like their death lineup. It's what everyone tried to build or model after. They just do it best.
Yeah, Steve Kerr, I think, said that Andre Iguodala is the most fundamentally sound player he's ever seen, and just some of the small things he does, like even the fact he can't always, he's not a consistent 3-point shooter, he'll still make the defender kind of defend him in a sense, either come to him or he'll attack the defender where they have to put a body on him, and he's taking two bodies. Next thing you know, you're getting an open shot for Steph, Klay, or KD. He's a very smart player. I would recommend anybody who feels super rusty at basketball and they're going to play pickup, watch little Andre Iguodala because he does a lot with a little. Not saying he's not talented, but he seems almost a lot more talented than he is because he's so smart.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who doesn't trust his jump shot and he never seems to take, enough jump shots that, or doesn't seem to take enough bad attempts that negatively affect his team.
Exactly. He doesn't he's never feels like he's really dragging them down. So I think that's just huge. And he's just that steadying force and he's such a switchable player, able to guard so many positions. On the Pelican side, what do we learn about them?
I think what we learned is, that another team that's on the rise. Um, that first round series, make of it what you will over that sweep of the Blazers. But, Anthony Davis is dominant. Drew Holiday, he turned my head. Even though I knew he was having a really good year, he still turned my head with his playoff performance. He was a stud. Drew Holiday a couple years ago couldn't stay healthy. He got moved from the Sixers. I really didn't see him as anything besides like a mid-level guard in this league. And you can make the argument that he's a top 5 shooting guard at this point. He's been tremendous. And Rondo, I think, really found a place at home there. He's got the leadership there. And, if they re-signed DeMarcus Cousins, who knows how this thing develops in the future.
Yeah, I loved Holiday. I love the way he played. It's happy to see him healthy. Like you said, when he left Philly, I was very intrigued by the trade. But a lot of stuff came out after that trade that, Philly traded him and he still had a broken bone in his leg or something like that, where it was kind of like a sloppy health work and stuff, which probably hurt him. And then obviously the terrible situation with his wife where she had to get surgery. He had to take time off. I felt like this year he probably could really focus on basketball. He seemed a lot more confident. And for him, it's just building off this season. Doing the things we saw you do in the playoffs, be a more aggressive scorer, especially with the attention that Anthony Davis is going to constantly get. I'm sure having Rondo around has helped the guys as well. And like you said, Anthony Davis, I think, pretty much solidified himself as a top 5 player if you didn't already think that. And he probably entered the argument for top 3 in the league just because of his overall impact. And it felt like he really didn't have a bad game all postseason, even though the Pelicans got, beat pretty badly by the Warriors a few times.
Yeah, and lastly, too, Miracek. That was a great deal.
And at the time, it looked like it could go either way, and it really turned out well for the Pelicans.
Yeah, he was, and I don't know if he's there long term. I don't know the kind of situation, but he definitely fits right in. I think him next to Davis is just something they needed. That stretch 4 who can knock down the 3. And all year, I know we mentioned a few times in the pod that we expected his hot hand to slow down. And it did for like 2 weeks. He shaved his beard and he was right back to usual.
Yeah, I think just for him, it's going to be consistency. Where is he at as an NBA player? You don't want these guys that are super hot and super cold. You want something in between. Obviously, that's a perfect world. Now, with DeMarcus Cousins, there's been a lot of talk about them potentially doing a sign and trade, not signing him with all the injury. Like, I feel like this team just needs another great wing player. That small forward position really hurts them. Darius Miller hasn't been great in the playoffs. They were having to play small a lot of the time. How do you think a small forward would change this team? Like an elite wing, or maybe even not even elite, like a top 15 wing?
I mean, I think it's funny, actually. I was thinking about this the other night. There are so many teams right now that need a wing.
Mm.
Like, for example, Paul George is probably the best wing available. Yes, Kevin Durant a free agent, so is LeBron James, but we don't really know. Kevin Durant ain't going nowhere.
They're in a different type of class. Yeah, Kevin Durant already announced some, camp for kids at Oracle this summer. So,
but for like a Paul George, that's a guy who could be used on like 10 different teams. Even Wilson Chandler, even though I know he likes to play the power forward, I'm pretty sure he's going to be a free agent. A lot of people could be calling for Wilson Chandler too. But I agree. If you put a 3-and-D guy, a consistent 3-and-D guy, not a Solomon Hill or a Darius Miller on this Pelicans team, it completely changes what they're doing.
I believe the Ringer posted an article where put out the idea of a sign and trade with Washington sending Otto Porter to New Orleans.
I wouldn't be against that because I think he's one of those guys who can take a lesser role and be okay with,
He's
You know,
super efficient. He doesn't turn
yeah,
the ball over. He shoots a high percentage. He'd be happy kind of just doing his thing. And he'd probably be able to develop a little bit more because, AD and Drew Holiday aren't as ball dominant probably as Bradley Beal and John Wall. So, I
yeah.
mean, it's an interesting idea. And I think, Washington's a team looking to make a move. There's going to be a lot of teams looking to make a move. And the Pelicans are in a weird spot because they don't have a great cap situation, but they do have this trade chip and DeMarcus Cousins in a sign and trade, possibly. It's just a lot of interesting things in New Orleans. And obviously, anytime you have one of these elite players, other players want to play with Anthony Davis. It's
Hey,
a luxury playing with a guy like that.
who knows? Maybe the Lakers get a Paul George or something, and they do a sign and trade for DeMarcus Cousins and Brandon Ingram, and somebody else ends up in New Orleans. Maybe.
Yeah, you never know. And they're at an age where they're not super old, they're not super young, but they're kind of like all entering their prime, Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis. So it's like, there's an opportunity to take advantage of this. It's really intriguing, and maybe you keep Cousins. A lot depends on, that mindset and the whole Cousins recovery situation. But I think the Pelicans got to feel a lot better about their situation now than they did before the season.
I agree.
All
It's
right.
it's been a really positive year, and Alvin Gentry, a guy who everyone said was on the hot seat, another coach who did a really good job.
Yeah, and I think Rajon Rondo doesn't really get enough love, and I think Gentry would probably be the first guy to say, like, he helped me a lot this season, and I think I saw a few times, when they mic up the coach or mic up the player, he was, like, giving messages to Rondo to get to the team to kind of get them to cool off in certain situations. I think that really, really went well, and it's weird to say this, but both of these second-round knockouts that got knocked out in 5 games, the Jazz and the Pelicans, both teams feel like they're in really good spot right now.
I agree.
But let's move to the East. So we'll talk about the knockout right now, and that's Cavs-Raptors. This was a sweep, and I can't say that I'm surprised. I had a feeling that after the Raptors lost Game 1 in the fashion they did in overtime, that they weren't going to win this series, and I didn't really see it going much farther than 5. Now that's not. I want to say I picked the Cavs in 6, but after that Game 1 loss, I think it was really easy to see this result.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Cavs in 7. I just thought the Raptors were going to be more of a fight. Like I said, we talked about this. We were done betting against LeBron. At least, especially me. I was sold on LeBron and Cavs in 7 over the Pacers, and then the Pacer fan in me said, "Nah, screw it, Pacers in 7." Going into that Game 7, and I was wrong. And like you said, after that Game 1 win, it just kind of felt like the Raptors were mentally out of it, and then after Game 2, it really felt like they weren't going to go back to Toronto.
Yeah,
I think
after
we
going
said
down
it, actually,
2-0
on that podcast. We said if the Raptors lose Game 2, this series is over.
Yeah,
There was no way they were going to be able to recuperate from losing 2 games at home.
especially going to Cleveland. Like, best case scenario, they were pushing at 5 after losing Game 2. But before we bash the Raptors, I guess let's talk positive from the Cavs. And obviously, LeBron had a very nice game winner, in this series. But also, Kevin Love stepped up. A lot of supporting cast. Kyle Korver, J.R. Smith. A lot of guys all over the place really picked up their game in this series, and that's not what we saw in the Pacers series at all.
Yeah, it wasn't this. Obviously the narrative is always LeBron and company, and not the Cavs. And recently, I've been seeing NBA Twitter upset for the fact that people aren't giving, like you mentioned, Kevin Love respect for what he did this series, and J.R. Smith, Korver, etc. And LeBron still scored like 30+ points every game, guys. So it wasn't like, yes, he had help, but LeBron still dominated. But like you mentioned, he had help. Kevin Love was huge. We saw Kevin Love be aggressive, not settling for jump shots, taking it down low, bullying the ball into the rim, grabbing double digit in rebounds. We saw J.R. Smith not miss a shot in Game 4. Kyle Korver running off screens, hitting anything that he got. If he got a second to breathe, Kyle Korver was hitting a 3. Jeff Green was hitting jump shots. Tristan Thompson remained consistent. Like you mentioned, George Hill too. Everybody from the Cavs played a really good series, which was completely opposite of round 1. If you're the Cavs, you got to feel good about everybody coming to life the later you get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you do. You have to feel great about the supporting cast stepping up. Zach Lowe obviously always writes great articles. You did a great piece on Kevin Love and Kyle Korver and how they've really been dominating teams with their pick and roll with each other. And not even pick and roll, my mistake, off ball, setting picks for each other and screens, where it's just so difficult to defend because if you overcommit to Korver, Love's going to hit the three or he's going to get the mismatch on the smaller defender. You mentioned George Hill. I feel like low key, he has actually been very impactful for the Cavs. It's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but it's just the small things. Picking up guys defensively, being that pest. And then on the offensive end, being in the right spot, also being a ball handler. So LeBron doesn't have to deal with someone grinding on him up the court, for 48 minutes. It's just you have George Hill there setting up the offense once in a while, giving LeBron a few possessions off. I feel like just a lot of these guys are starting to find their roles in this team, which is perfect for the Cavs. And LeBron has to be super happy about that. And the fact that his road to the finals has just got a lot easier because it's most likely he's going to see Boston. He's not even going to have to deal with a Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons.
Yeah, you know what's something else I noticed this series in particular? It wasn't against the Pacers. It felt like, at least for 3 games, it might have been all 4, but it felt like LeBron was able for the first time to take a back seat in all of the first quarters.
Yeah,
It
he was
felt
able
like
to get some rest, and even like not even just the first quarter. There was possessions in games where he was actually able to take the back seat. Where in the Pacers series, it felt like if it wasn't LeBron, it wasn't anything.
right. Like, for example, I think it was game 3. George Hill was really aggressive out of the box. He had 4 or 5 dunks to start off, or 3 or 4 dunks to start off the game. And LeBron, I think, finished. I think actually in game 3 and 4, LeBron ended up going to the second quarter with under 10 points. And anytime LeBron's not being the scoring vocal point, we've mentioned this, it doesn't look good for you. It's not good when LeBron can pick you apart passing wise and let other guys attack you while he doesn't have to be aggressive. And I think the Cavs getting off the hot starts is a big reason why they dominated the Raptors.
And they're going to look to build his confidence. LeBron is probably one of maybe arguably the smartest guy in the NBA. So he's going to take advantage of this on the mental side and really work these guys. And Korver and Love really are developing their relationship, like I mentioned, and they're going to try to attack, whoever they face in the next series. But if you're in Cleveland, things are looking a lot better than they did, last month, a week ago, 2 months ago. Everything just seems to completely change. Defense hasn't been amazing, but the effort has picked up, and that's all you really need defensively when you're putting up points like that. At least for now.
I have a question for you, though, Nick, because we are obviously talking about the good in Cleveland, but there has been one bad that came out after game
Rodney
4.
Hood.
Yeah, the Rodney Hood situation of him, refusing to go into a game. Is this something or nothing?
I mean, for Rodney Hood's perspective, it's something. For the Cavs, I think they can kind of dismiss it. They can just sit him the rest of the playoffs if they want to. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's hard to trust a guy after he does that. And I really don't know what Rodney Hood is thinking because he had opportunities to perform in this series and the previous series, and he's played like trash. And I don't think it's not like they needed him to be a defensive stopper, even if your shot's not falling. He didn't really do much against Victor Oladipo. So Rodney Hood, I think, is a guy that it was kind of an immature moment. Obviously, we're not in the locker room. We don't know what they've said to him, what his role is supposed to be like. But going in, I think he's a restricted free agent this summer. He's not helping his money, and I wouldn't be surprised if his days in Cleveland are done just because I personally, from an organizational standpoint, if I was a front office member, unless there's something I didn't know about, like that we don't know about right now, I would not want him on my team next year. And I wouldn't even want him on my team for the rest of the playoffs if I could sign somebody right now and bring them on instead because – how are you going to tell your coach that you are not going to come into the game? I don't want to say it's a crucial moment because the Cavs are up so much, but still, like it's a playoff game in the second round, a moment that he was in the second round last year, but you've never really had this opportunity to be on a championship team like this, and you're just going to throw it in the garbage for your ego. Not a smart move.
Well, not just that, it was an elimination game. If he gets on the floor in those final 7 minutes, you're going to be on the floor for that final buzzer that signifies your team is moving on.
Exactly.
I'm right there with you. I don't understand it. If it's a thing of pride, then, Rodney Hood, shame on you. Because at this stage of the playoffs and this stage of the game, you can't be thinking about the I. You're thinking about the team. This isn't about you. There is no me right now. And like you mentioned, I think I mentioned this also on Twitter. I think that Rodney Hood seriously hurt his money. I wouldn't be surprised if he just lost $5 million off his next deal because of this simple act. And they may seem like nothing, but it is like we both just mentioned, it's not nothing. You can't do that. Your team is competing. Your team hasn't even lost a game this round. You move on and you're telling your coach no. It's a slap in the face to everyone on that team. And obviously, he's not going to be suspended. They said there was no disciplinary actions to be had, but there's still an internal there's still an internal issue despite that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be happy about it. And if I'm a GM looking to sign him this summer, it's definitely a negative for him. And his game's already very inconsistent. He's dealt with injuries. Anytime you do that to your case, it's not going to help. But let's talk Raptors if we're going to talk negative. And this is heartbreaking for them. I mean, this was a great season, number one seed. They had the depth, they had the bench. They didn't rely on Lowry and DeRozan to do everything. They get to the playoffs. They beat the Wizards in 6 games. Look solid. They didn't look as good as they did in the regular season, but then they get to the series. This is what they've been waiting for since the last playoffs where they got knocked out by the Cavs. And to get swept like this, I think there's really nothing other to say than heartbreak.
Definitely heartbreak. We, the public, Raptor fans, we were all bamboozled. And we all and maybe we just have too high expectations for the Raptors. Maybe we should stop thinking that they're the team to dethrone LeBron.
I think Jonathan Abraham brought up some good points, and he mentioned this to me, and we talked about this on a pod before as well, is the fact that the Raptors struggled against elite teams all season should have been more of a red flag. And I think people were too busy looking at the record, some of the stats, to realize, all right, when they actually play good teams, they're not that good.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, the bench underperformed. They look like the lights were too bright.
They got outplayed by a Cavs bench who looked terrible in the previous round.
Yeah. And because of that, because of them struggling, it really made it so DeRozan and Lowry, they went back to the ISO. They didn't trust the guys as much when everyone else was struggling. And DeRozan, for the most part, just looked out of sorts. I didn't see any rhythm from him all series.
Yeah, it was a tough series for him mentally too. He missed a lot. Even LeBron said this, and I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron said this on purpose, is DeRozan was just missing a lot of shots he usually makes.
Yeah.
He was getting good matchups against guys like Korver. J.R. Smith has had his number in the past, but he's not an amazing defender. So it's just really upsetting for the Raptors. What is next for the Raptors? Let's start one piece at a time. Do they fire Dwayne Casey?
Well, he just won Coach of the Year today, right?
Oh, I believe he won Coach of the Year voted on by his peers. I don't think he won the official Coach of the Year award. But, I mean, getting voted Coach of the Year by your peers is pretty impressive.
Right. So shout out to him, obviously, because, 59 wins and having a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense is certainly something. But I think this will be the last time he gets an award with Toronto because I think his days are numbered. It's hard to fire a guy when you have – a career franchise year, but Frank Vogel brought the Pacers to 5 playoff appearances in 6 years, then he got fired. Sometimes it's just time for change. Sometimes different voices are needed. As like Jonathan Abraham said to me, the Raptors' salary cap and roster is really tight. They're not going to probably be able to make any moves unless they move with DeMar DeRozan. Because who's going to want a Kyle Lowry at the age of 32 for $32 million? I can't name that many teams.
Sounds like a salary dump.
Right. So likely they're going to have to, try and fire the head coach, hope the younger players develop, and hopefully a new voice and a new system can bring some kind of change to Toronto. Because unfortunately in the last, 3-4 years, it just hasn't worked.
Yeah. It's just like you said, with the salary cap and the options they have without really hurting their future, they don't have many moves to make. They can try to finagle some things, maybe work a few smaller pieces, maybe trade some of the younger guys and try to getting like another role player, more established, like veteran guy. But at the end of the day, what they really need is like an elite superstar or another all-star, and they really don't have the assets to get it at this time. So I think firing Casey, and I don't even want to say firing because I feel like it should be more of like parting ways. Like Dwayne Casey's done everything he really could with this bunch. And some of it has been adjustments by him, but some of it's just been they haven't performed. Like they didn't play well enough to really compete in this series. And he even mentioned he thought the guys would compete more and they just didn't. So I think for him, it makes sense to leave too and maybe go to another team, a different situation where you have more flexibility and stuff.
Yeah, I got 2 things to say quick. Following what you just said, for sure he should not be fired. I agree. It should be a parting ways. And I also will say that if he becomes, available for a head coaching job, he should be swooped up within 2 weeks after if he wants that job. Like there is no reason why he shouldn't be coaching the NBA next year, even if he does get removed from the Raptors.
Yeah,
Because
he easily could get it. I would think that if he didn't get a job this year, it'd probably be the next season.
yeah, I don't think there should be any reason why he doesn't have a job, just because of this. And like you mentioned about the team not playing hard, this Raptors team, I stand by it. Even though they just got swept, they should have won at least 2 games. If you take a couple different bounces in the overtime game and whatnot, this is a completely different.
I mean, if you don't let LeBron just freaking get the last shot and get a game winner out of 8 seconds full court, I'm not sure how you even let him get that close to the rim at that point. But I think there's just
a terrible coaching decision because he said he thought he told them to trap, and then the players said that he never told them to trap. Which, it
sounds like a bad disconnect in the team just not being on the same page, which means either he didn't say it or they're not listening to his voice, which means it's time to make the move and just move on from there. And like you said, Raptor-wise, do you think there's a possibility that DeMar is moved this summer?
I don't think you take the option off the table just yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the option's on the table. I think you have to look at all different avenues, unless – Jonathan said that they're okay with, being on national television and making money, the Raptors. If that's the case, then okay.
For me, winning 50 games is still a nice accomplishment. It's just like your end game. There is no end game. It's more of like, all right, we're okay being pretty good and not doing anything crazy.
Yeah, if that's the case, then, so be it. But I'm going to look at it from the standpoint of trying to win. And if you're trying to win, a head coaching change is needed. And you have to at least explore the option of what trading a DeMar DeRozan can do. Because obviously you have some nice young players. You have a few guys you can possibly build around in the future. Maybe you trade a DeMar and you bring in a couple more assets. Lowry can, tutor those guys. You still got Serge Ibaka. Maybe some things can change for the future.
The Lakers would be a team that obviously is they're looking like they want to get a big fish this summer. Magic Johnson just seems that mentality. I believe DeMar is from Compton.
He's an LA guy.
Yeah, there was some ties to the Lakers when he was a free agent that he was a lock to go there. I mean, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. So, like you said, I think you have to listen to the offers. But at the end of the day, you're probably not going to get the value that you want for him anyways. And his game is kind of confusing in a sense. Like, he improved a lot this year, but those improvements did not show up in the playoffs. And his playoff play has not been what you wanted to see from possibly, your one or your second best player.
Yeah, he went from having complete confidence in his jump shot to having very little confidence in the playoffs, which obviously it was a tale of 2 seasons.
It sucks for him too, is like, you wish him the best too. And he came out and he was a great advocate for mental health. And, that's always something very impressive for somebody in a spotlight like that to really help a lot of people. So you wish the best for DeMar and just see what can happen for the Raptors. Talking about Boston and Philly, this series now is 3-1. Obviously the Celtics were up 3-0. Is there any chance that the Sixers come back and win the series and create a historical moment?
Yes.
Wow.
I think there is. Because I still think on paper they have the better team. If you're going by talent to talent, I think the Sixers have the better team. But the biggest asterisk next to the Sixers is they don't have a very good head coach.
I wouldn't say that he's not a very good head coach. I would say, he's been out coached by Brad Stevens, but it's also been a lot of just inexperience because, like I said previously before, in that game 3, he was not the one that's Ben Simmons who threw the ball at, out of bounds, or threw the ball to Al Horford and JJ Redick who threw the ball or I believe to Jaylen Brown or Terry Rozier. So like the turnovers and stuff, I think some of it's just like, Brett Brown doesn't necessarily done a great job, but like the inexperience has just shown up so much in this series.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I guess I'm just overcritical on that. And then the game 2, second quarter run that the Celtics went on when he called no timeouts. He just, like you said, it is a lot of inexperience from the players and to that coaching position. They're just not a experienced bunch. But I don't think the series is over. Anytime Joel Embiid is a borderline star, Ben Simmons is an up and coming star. I think if these guys play to how they played all season, and if the Celtics slip up slightly, if they're not getting huge contributions from the guys who have, like Rozier and Jalen and Jason Tatum, if those guys struggle, it could be a completely different series. I think this goes back to Philly. I think Philly wins tonight.
Interesting. I mean, I think it's a possibility. I don't think it's there was a team and I just feel like a Joel Embiid team that's just talking mad trash, trying to get in their head, would be a team that has a possibility. I just don't think Brad Stevens really allows it to happen. Like even if they get to a game 7, I feel like Boston probably just grinds that out. Al Horford. The one other thing on Philly side too is that some of the shooting numbers for Boston have been outliers. Terry Rozier was shooting ridiculous numbers in the beginning. Aaron Baines was knocking down threes. If they start to come down and Philly starts to get more towards their, average shooting numbers, hey, it really could get pushed a lot farther because they've just been underperforming not only from, actual effort standpoint, but shooting wise, they've been ice cold. So if they can kind of flip the switch, I think it's not out of the realm of possibilities to see history made.
Yeah,
But would I bet on it? No.
yeah, no, I'm not betting on it for sure. The turnover battle too last game. Philly did a really good job not turning the ball over, while in the Celtics were really careless with the ball.
And that should be an area where Philly has had turnover issues during the season, but in the Heat series, they did a better job. They have more ball handlers and talented offensive players. So you look at Boston, there's not a ton of great, like Terry Rozier. Yeah, he's been amazing in the postseason, but he's really not an established point guard where he's a guy who's been starting 80 games for 5 seasons or anything. I feel like there's opportunities to capitalize on some of their youth because they're not necessarily the most experienced team. They have more experience than the Sixers, which isn't saying much, but I feel like Philly just needs to kind of turn off the effort defensively. They need to knock down some shots, and Robert Covington needs to show up.
Robert Covington certainly needs to show up. Man, he's really streaky. I know he's always been streaky, but in the playoffs in particular,
he's been bad streaky.
Having a 1-point game. I think he had a no-point game last round. He just needs to show up. He just needs to hit a couple shots. Don't take the off-balance threes and the highly contested threes and jump shots. It's not who you are. You're not Paul George.
Honestly, uncontested, like fading off-balance threes, I'm really not happy with anybody taking them unless
Marco
they're
Bellinelli does it too. JJ, all those guys. Yeah. The Phillies, the 76ers in general love taking off-balance threes for whatever reason.
And sometimes they're wide open. They still shoot off balance, which really is annoying. Like, dog, you're not Steph or Klay or KD. You're not the Warriors. You need to kind of work up to that level.
Yeah, I saw Bellinelli do that once or twice last game. He came off a screen. He was still faded. And it's like, you don't need to. You have the screen.
It makes it a whole nother level. But from the Boston side, any takes on them?
Just keep doing what you're doing.
Just keep gritting and grinding.
Take that big heart and just keep pounding it. Keep going home. You're in the Garden tonight. You're gonna have those rabid fans hoping you close it out. Just play your style of game, grind it out. Hopefully, Jaylen Brown, continues. Even though he hasn't been as great offensively the last couple of games, he seems to be making the big plays when the Celtics need it. Same thing with Terry. Scary Terry and Jason Tatum's on a heat streak.
Tatum's arguably been the best rookie this postseason. Yeah, as good as Donovan Mitchell and Ben Simmons was better in the first round. Tatum
most efficient.
He's just been doing a lot of good things and hit a lot of big shots. And Philly needs to do, and then getting back to the Philly side a little bit, I think what they did in Game 4 was they attacked inside a little bit more, and they need to do that again in Game 5 and 6 if they want to keep pushing this thing further.
I agree. They just need to be aggressive. You can't lay off the pedal. I think we saw that in Game 2. They came out really aggressive, and Philly has a tendency when they get out to really good starts, they take their foot off the pedal for whatever reason. They don't seem to be able to regain composure. And you have to play a full 48 minutes.
Similar to the Rockets, Philly has been a team that has felt like they haven't really played consistent basketball. In the Heat series, yes, they won in 5, but they had games where they were mediocre in the first half and they just turned up in the third or fourth or in the second half, and that just doesn't fly against a Boston team.
Yeah, Miami had to lead 3 out of 5 games going into halftime in that series.
So, that says it all right there. They're just a team, like, they realize they're mad talented, but they don't play up to the effort level necessary. And that goes for a couple players in the team. It can be the basic things like defensive effort or transition D, setting a hard pick, driving to the rim, willing to take the contact. I just think regardless, Philly loses tonight, they lose in 2 games, they win the series, whatever. Great playoff experience for them moving forward.
For sure. And I think what it also does is this playoff run for Philly, it really opens the door for free agents. I'm not talking just LeBron. I'm talking wide. It tells everybody that we're on the rise. We are close. We have a budding star in Simmons. We have a bunch of nice young guys. We have Embiid, who is arguably already a top 5 center in this league.
I think he's top 5 easily.
Yeah, we just need a little more, and I think it opens the door for a lot of players from either this year and next year to possibly want to come to Philly.
And not only the star guys, but I think kind of goes flown under the radar is the attraction to some of the younger role player veterans that you kind of need on a team like this that they're missing right now. Yeah, you're Sanali Silva, Marco Bellinelli, JJ Redick, but have they really won anything big? Like I think JJ's been to he's had some deep playoff runs. But
he lost an NBA Finals, I think, with the Magic, right, to the Lakers.
Yep, exactly, with a Dwight team. So I think that's an issue, and it's just kind of see what happens in the offseason. They also have some really nice trade chips. Obviously, Markelle Fultz, a couple extra picks in there too. Interesting to see what happens with that squad this offseason. But that wraps it up for today. Like we mentioned, we'll be doing an Eastern and Western Conference Final. Depending on the Eastern Conference will depend on what happens between Philly and Boston. Western Conference Final will definitely be out by this weekend.
I got a hot take for that one.
And he's got a hot take for that one as well. And check out our Eastern and Western Conference Finals coverage because the plan right now is to get you a ton of articles and a ton of podcasts. So keep an eye on that on the OTG Twitter at OTG Basketball. But that wraps it up. As always, thank you for hopping on, Kory. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Of course, it's eating season, boys. Playoffs.